All right, so today we're talking about Sites Reservoir, which some of you might know a whole lot about. And if you do, that's great. Fill in anything that you think I missed at the end of this. And then if you haven't heard of Sites, well, this is a great intro. So what is Sites Reservoir? The state is considering letting California's largest water users build a 1.5 million acre foot, or about 20 square mile, reservoir that would divert much more water from the Sacramento River. It's about 13,200 acres, and at that size, Sites Reservoir, which is formally called the Sites Off-Stream Storage Reservoir Project, would be one of the largest reservoirs in California and would include new water diversions from the Sacramento River that could also adversely impact the Trinity River. Since the plan includes water storage for the Bureau of Reclamation, the agency that delivers federal water project water to Westland's Water District, the major diverter of Trinity River water, Sites could cause the Sacramento, Shasta, and Trinity reservoirs to be overdrafted. The Trinity is the largest tributary to the struggling Klamath River and its coldest water source. Sites Reservoir currently does not propose to divert water only during really wet years and extremely wet periods, but instead plans to divert water in most years, including averaging nearly 100,000 acre feet of water diversions in dry and critically dry years. Sites Reservoir is now estimating that it will yield around 260,000 acre feet of water per year on average, with more water in drier years and less in wet years. But that means that in most future droughts, there will not be a lot of water in storage, and even less once biologically credible bypass flows and environmental protections are required. While Sites proponents claim the reservoir would have 1 million acre feet of water in 2021, even their modeling, which again assumes that they can divert water in critically dry years and without adequate environmental safeguards, shows there would have been only a total of 50,000 acre feet of water released from Sites during the prior drought in 2014 to 2015. So it doesn't really quite add up. Reclamation and DWR are the lead agencies pursuant to NEPA, that's the National EPA Act, and CEQA, that's California Environmental Quality Act, for the investigations, the NODOS investigation and feasibility studies. Reclamation and DWR have taken primary responsibility for preparing the environmental review and feasibility documents. So those are our two targets there, Reclamation and DWR. The following agencies have acted as cooperating agencies under NEPA based on their individual jurisdiction or special expertise as it relates to the project. The Sites Project Joint Powers Authority, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Colusa Indian Community Council, Cortina Indian Rancheria, Western Area Power Administration, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So what is off-stream storage? The NODOS investigation focuses on off-stream storage north of the Delta. Consistent with CalFed solution principles, constructing new dams across rivers, so that's on-stream storage, was not considered in this case. Instead, storage locations that would not add a new dam on a major stream were considered and evaluated. So they only were looking at off-stream from the very beginning. Off-stream storage located north of the Delta would require conveying water from the Sacramento River or one of its major tributaries to the new storage location. An off-stream storage conveyance system could either use existing diversions and canals or new diversions and conveyance. Water would be diverted during periods of relatively higher flow through the conveyance system into the new off-stream storage reservoir and stored until it is needed to meet the planning objectives. So we talk a lot about Sites, we talk a lot about the Delta Tunnel. Now you're hearing about Sites. So how are they related? Why are we talking about them in a Delta Tunnel focus group? In a nutshell, Sites would store water north of the Delta and then feed that water south through the tunnel. Basically, when all that water goes through the tunnel, if it's not going directly to be used by water agencies, it's going to end up in the Sites Reservoir waiting to be used. Also, I just want to note that it's in a region called the Antelope Valley, but this is in Colusa Valley. It's not the Antelope Valley near Palmdale that most of us think of. This is just a common thing that has been confusing people the last few weeks. So I just wanted to point that out before we get any further. So the proponents now estimate that Sites Reservoir will cost about $3.9 billion, billion with a B, to construct the project, and that's a 30% increase from prior estimates. estimates. As a result, water from sites is likely to cost more than $700 per acre foot on average. And that cost estimate does not include the additional cost to move water through the delta or to pay to move water down the California aqueduct and or other canals. So that's those transportation costs that San Diego is always upset about, the wheeling costs, and the cost of water treatment for municipal and industrial users. The Delta Tunnel will cost between 16 to 40 billion on top of the site's costs. And this is in an era of climate change where it was just predicted that the Sierra Nevada will not have snow in 25 years. I don't know if you saw that in the news yesterday, but yes, they're predicting now that in 25 years, the Sierra Nevada will no longer have any snow. How is sites related to MET or MWD, the folks that we're always talking about? Well, in large part due to these costs, the Westlands Water District and Kern County Water Agency and most other irrigation districts south of the Delta are not paying for sites and will not get any water from the project. A few irrigation districts south of the Delta have very small shares in the project. I think like 1% for Santa Clara Valley. The Wheeler Ridge Maricopa Water Storage District, they're going to get less than 1.6% of the total water supply from the project. The project will not benefit the vast majority of water districts that are getting a 0% water supply allocation in 2021 from the State Water Project. You might have heard us talking about that a lot of water agencies are mad that they're not getting any water from the State Water Project, that they've been cut off. And that's a big part of why they've been pushing for these VAs. Well, any of those folks who've been essentially cut off, they're really not going to get much from this. But instead, the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, or MET, will get the largest share of the water because they pay the largest share of the costs. They would pay more than 25% of the non-state share of costs. So that means the state's going to chip in, but beyond that, MET will pay for 25% of the non-state share of costs and water supply of the project. So they're going to pay for 25%, they're going to get 25% of the water from this project. And then if you remember, MET is also paying for about 65% of the Delta Conveyance project. So MET's really just racking up projects here, and on whose dime? Southern California's dime, water ratepayers' dime. So how is sites related to the VAs? Well, it's all connected in the Bay Delta, right? But the state is also considering continuing to put off a plan to restore flows to the Sacramento River and Bay Delta, known as the Bay Delta Quality Control Plan, in favor of voluntary regulation, known as the VAs, even though a lack of river and carryover storage protection has really obliterated salmon populations and done a lot of damage. These plans are going to be considered in the same State Water Board hearing. So they're going to be talking about both the VAs and Sites Reservoir and the Bay Delta Quality Control Plan all at the same time, and just plans on the Delta watershed overall. The state already has 1,400 dams, 1,400. And yet these dams and reservoirs don't provide new sources of water, and they have really high costs, both financially and to the EJ communities and the environment. So we just kind of keep seeing the same patterns here of folks kind of focusing on the wrong thing, of doing as much as they can to get the most water out of the Delta, whether it's through the VAs, through the tunnel, through sites, other dams and storage projects. It's all kind of the same theme that we're seeing, that we've been saying is just the wrong tunnel, the wrong path, the wrong alternative. It's just not where they should be going. So let's talk about salmon. Significant divergence from the Sacramento River to fill Sites Reservoir could result in substantial impacts to the river's ecosystem. As we discuss really nearly every week, reduced volume of water, that's the biggest thing that we've been talking about with all of these projects. It's that reduced volume of water. And then water quality due to the inability to flush out runoff, ag waste, and municipal waste. They increase temperature, salinity, and HABs. These are all the issues when we reduce the volume of water in the Delta. These affect the sensitive, riparian, and aquatic habitats. The region where sites would be built is in an area that naturally produces selenium and other metals and potential pollutants. There may be abandoned mercury mines in the reservoir. That's a big possibility in that reservoir footprint. and those could release the mineral in warmer water temperatures. Save California Salmon says that up to 98% of the Sacramento River winter run salmon died this last summer due to climate-related drought and overallocation of water to industrial farmers. In the upper Sacramento River, numerous studies have showed that the survival of juvenile salmon migrating downstream depends on adequate river flows, with survival of these salmon decreasing dramatically as flows decrease. Importantly, there are juvenile salmon migrating down the Sacramento River from at least October until June, including not only threatened and endangered species like winter run, but also the fall run Chinook salmon, which really form the backbone of the state salmon fishery, which we know we've talked about is a huge part of tribal economies, especially in Northern California. For salmon, peer-reviewed studies have demonstrated that reducing Sacramento River flow causes the survival of salmon migrating through the delta to decrease when flows are less than about 35,000 CFS, that's cubic feet squared, at Freeport. And then the reduction in the Sacramento River inflows into the delta will also reduce delta flow, harming species whose survival and abundance is dependent on the delta outflow, particularly longfin smelt and delta smelt, which you've heard all about those smelt. So Sites Reservoir and the rest of the environmental impacts. One estimate is that sites would drown about 14,000 acres of grassland, woodland, chaparral, riparian habitat, vernal pools, and wetlands. And 19 acres of those wetlands are really rare alkali wetlands. 24 species of endangered or threatened species would be at risk. Those are the little guys you see listed here on this slide. And then there are about 56 other endangered species that have the potential to be threatened beyond that. There are 4 plant species that the California Native Plant Species deem a rare distribution in this affected site. So they're going to take a hit. Electricity is going to be generated when water is released from the reservoir, but electricity is needed to pump water into the reservoir. The amount of electricity needed and produced is kind of unpredictable depending on temperature and everything else and climate change, but it's likely that they will need more electricity than it will produce. Estimates of the greenhouse gases produced by the need of electricity combined with the rotting vegetation of the reservoir will produce as much carbon dioxide as all of the commuter cars in the LA basin for 2 days. And that was at the old EIR. That's not even looking at the new ones. That's about 2018. Sites Reservoir would be located on the Great Valley Fault System, and that system produced a 6.7 magnitude earthquake in 1892 and another 6.7 earthquake again in 1983. So we all know the big one is coming anytime. So it's really not a great spot to put that. California reservoirs lose 2 million acre feet of water per year to evaporation, and Sites is predicted as of the last EIR to lose around 30,000 acre feet a year, or about 7% of its water. And you can see here, that's a western red bat, cute little bat that's going to be threatened by Sites Reservoir. So here's a quote that I thought was particularly powerful. We have been working to restore flows to help water quality and to bring salmon back over the dams and back to native lands for salmon survival and tribal people, explained Pitt River tribal member Morningstar Galley. California is losing the salmon and our clean water. This is an issue of justice. We already have over 1,000 reservoirs and more water allocated than exists in California. An environmentally destructive private reservoir being built in an area that is important to Native people is a step in the wrong direction. Field studies have shown that there are 41 prehistoric sites in the area of impact for Sites Reservoir, 17 of which meet the criteria to be placed on the National Register of Historic Places. There's just a map to kind of look at where everything would be. The Sites Reservoir project will be situated on the west side of the Sacramento Valley, approximately 10 miles west of Maxwell, California, in Glenn and Colusa counties. The Sacramento Valley is a unique region known for its farming community, its rich agricultural benefits, and natural beauty. This region has been considered for off-stream water storage since the 1980s. They kind of keep poking at it. give you a moment to look at that. So let me tell you about some policy that already exists. Sierra Club, NRDC, and a bunch of our other environmental ally organizations supported Prop 1 in 2014 to put $2.7 billion towards projects. And we supported some very specific projects, mainly groundwater remediation, water testing facilities, recycling water projects. And we didn't think at the time, I think most people didn't think at the time that Prop 1 would be likely to fund a big environmentally destructive projects. I don't think this is something that people predicted. Prop 1 was not able to fund expanding Shasta or Temperance Flat dams. But here we are now. In 2018, state agencies submitted comments with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, finding the proposed reservoir would harm salmon, longfin smelt, and other species, and that the site's NEPA and CEQA document failed to comply with CEQA. It was clear even then that the project needed to significantly reduce its planned water diversions and would likely yield less than half the water that the project originally proposed in order to avoid harming salmon, longfin smelt, and the other species. So yes, the proponents have reduced the estimated water supply yield substantially since 2018, but now proponents still refuse to analyze scientifically credible flow requirements in the supplemental NEPA and CEQA document that are necessary to protect salmon, longfin smelt, and other species. We've kind of heard Deirdre talk about that sometimes, that there are a lot of facts and science and research that's been studied and put out there that some of these water agencies in charge, they just seem to refuse to look at any of these. So it's very disappointing. Instead, the forthcoming NEPA and CEQA document analyzes a single operational scenario that allows water diversions that are plainly not protective of salmon or the Sacramento River or the Bay Delta ecosystem. The current proposed operational criteria clearly do not provide the minimum bypass flows and other requirements that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife have been recommending for years, at a time when the Bay Delta is in ecological crisis and state and federal agencies have recognized the need to significantly increase flows into and through the Bay Delta. Sites Reservoir would decrease flows and worsen environmental conditions in the watershed. The current revised CEQA and NEPA document does not analyze allowable water diversions under the State Water Resource Control Board's 2018 framework, which proposed unimpaired flow requirements, which would require significantly higher flows and reduce diversions in most years than what the current proposal suggests. Now, while the proponents have suggested habitat restoration and mitigate impacts to longfin smelt, there is no credible scientific evidence to support the idea that habitat restoration could compensate for the reduction in delta outflow. So this kind of touches on some themes that we keep seeing over and over again throughout this last year. The Water Board's 2018 framework, that was something that continues to be ignored with these different large water projects that we've been seeing. We always keep it back to the higher flows. And if it didn't pass last time and they're not making significant enough changes, I don't know that it would pass this time, but there's also a lot of political power and influence, a lot of lobbyists on the side of mega agriculture. So we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, nothing has really changed. We still need more water in delta outflow to support the habitat and survival of smelt. So solutions. Why is Metropolitan proposing to pay for this project, which will cost more than $1 billion once debt financing charges are accounted for, when their recent urban water management plan claims that the agency has a surplus of water supply even during droughts? Board members often say they have a problem of riches. That's one that they like to say all the time. They have a problem of riches. And their integrated resources plan also suggests that they have surpluses of water. And we know that that was the case for most of the summer, that they had enough water to survive on when the rest of the state was really struggling in this drought. It seems that Met ratepayers have been paying for this project to benefit other water users rather than Met staff focusing on Met spending on projects that benefit Met's ratepayers, like several large-scale water recycling projects in Southern California. Once the costs of water treatment and transport are included, the large-scale water recycling projects are far more cost-effective for Met than sites in the tunnel, as well as providing a drought-resistant water supply without the environmental degradation that sites will cause. Ultimately, paying for storage in Sites Reservoir doesn't guarantee there will be any water in the reservoir in the next drought, and certainly not water that is cost-effective or an environmentally sustainable supply. California already has 1,400 reservoirs, and as President Obama's science advisor, John Holdren, explained in 2014, the problem in California is not that we don't have enough reservoirs, it's that we don't have enough water in them. So it's really not going to help to build any more. If you want to read some more about it, here is the draft EIR for sites that just came out, and we'll talk a little more about actions related to this. There's some other sources, I'll fix this link, that folks can check out if they want to see that. So why are we talking about this right now? Well, there's some actions coming up. Save California Salmon has this nice graphic here, and they've really been doing a lot of work on this. But some other things that you should know. So next week, Sierra Club will do the same presentation again, but it's going to be a town hall style meeting. So the water committee, some folks from the water committee, and then our policy advocate, maybe our director, will all be there to answer any more questions you have, because this is a pretty big project, pretty big deal. So we don't have a date for that yet, but sometime next week we'll have a town hall on the same topic. Then next Tuesday, we will be calling into Met's board meeting to show our displeasure at their support of sites. Met, they're a big fan. They're funding a huge part of sites, and just last week, right before Thanksgiving, their staff was telling their board, "Oh, sites is great. Sites and their water shortage is the answer to all of our problems." So when they're only hearing from their staff who are heavily invested in this project, it's not a good thing. They need to know that the public does not support sites. This is the wrong direction. So they need to hear from us, and that will be Tuesday, December 7th at 12 p.m. Then December 8th at 9 a.m., there's going to be a State Water and Resources Control Board, or the State Water Board, hearing on sites and the voluntary agreements and the Bay Delta Quality Control Plan, and overall just the Bay Delta watershed flows and everything kind of related to it. So that's what they'll be hearing on all of these different issues, and we'll need folks to call into that. And then, or actually, that one we might have just a handful of people from the water committee, but if anyone is interested, we can give you a very well-written script to read to that one, but that one, it's more about quality over quantity. And then on the 15th, we really need just a whole lot of folks calling in. So the Sites Authority, their JPA, is going to have the Sites Reservoir public hearings on December 15th at 6 p.m. and December 16th, I think at 9 a.m. And the California Water Commission is going to decide whether to provide $815 million of taxpayer money to the private reservoir. So basically, that's when they're going to decide, should they spend Prop 1 money on this project? Does Prop 1 money qualify? Does the Sites Reservoir qualify for Prop 1? We say no, it doesn't. We say no, don't spend our money on this. And that's really what they're going to be deciding. So like I said, the Sites Environmental Impact Report is out right now. Environmental organizations, lawyers, scientists are all reviewing it right now. And comments are due January 10th. So Sierra Club's policy folks and scientists are working on their comments. A lot of folks are working on that. We'll keep you up to date on that. But the comments that we submit generally will be what our talking points are when we have folks call into this. So I'm just giving you a heads up now on everything that's coming up, but I'm going to send you instructions, talking points, all of these. So the links to all of these meetings, what to say at all of these meetings, how to call in, times and dates. So if you didn't catch it all right now, don't worry about any of that. You're going to get everything. Any questions? And yes, Steve, I will absolutely make sure you're going to have your prepared remarks. I wouldn't let anybody do this without talking points. It's way too much to remember. I'm going to turn off the recording now so people can feel comfortable to speak freely.